Guys, I want to take a second to tell you about All Everything Entertainment. They are your home for the latest breaking news and opinions about sports, wrestling, and entertainment. From jock to geek and everyone in between, they will definitely have something for you. As I'm recording this, they have 10 live weekly podcasts that can be watched daily on Facebook, YouTube, or alleverythingentertainment.com. The replays are available on their Facebook, YouTube, SoundCloud, or iTunes channels. Their shows run the gamut as they talk about the NFL, NBA, NHL, football, movies, bi-weekly top 10 countdowns, paranormal activity, wrestling, WWE, AEW, NJPW, UFC, Bellator, and so much more. These guys, they're just like you. They're passionate individuals who love a variety of subjects, and that's why they started this company in May of 2019 to kind of be a one-stop shop for entertainment. On September 11th, 2020, they made arguably their biggest signing by agreeing to terms with yours truly, the Working Fans Podcast. I was out of work sick, and I was happy to join them as a part of their team. You can find them on SoundCloud, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube by searching All Everything Entertainment, or go to alleverythingentertainment.com for their full schedule and a full list of their shows. If you like us, you will 100% like them. Thank you. We want to take a minute to thank our newest sponsor on the show, 482 Designs. That is FOUR, the numbers 82 Designs, 482 Designs. You can find them on Facebook by looking up FOUR 82 Designs, at FOUR 82 Designs on Instagram. And if you want to email them, go to FOUR82designs@gmail.com. Pretty soon, we're going to be rolling out some high-quality t-shirts and stickers that were just done by the sponsor. Please check them out for any of your screen printing needs.
First off, it's a light years better than our first run. Also, it survived the washer and dryer. They look good, and they're good quality.
Nice. And those stickers before Paco chewed them up were amazing. And luckily, we'll be getting some more in, hopefully, before we start selling them to fans. But that's FOUR 82 Designs.
As Tracy Smothers says, you got to have a job to support your wrestling habit, you know?
Just 'cause I love my podcast.
Working fans.
I shed blood for my podcast.
Ra-da-da.
Let a podcast holla. Where my podcast?
The pussy at?
All I want to hear is right here, my podcast.
Somebody say something about a podcast.
You won't take this from me, baby. You will not take this from me, baby.
Fans, welcome to the Working Fans Podcast presents, aka Slippery Joe's Funhouse, where we bring you a bonus podcast each week presenting your favorite podcasts' favorite stuff. Now, we have some Tape Trader's Guide to the 90s coming up. We have some Cult in Connecticut. We'll be bringing you some Peter X. Morosky and a variety of other things through year 2. This is our 1-year anniversary. We are bringing you a bonus show. We hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Hello. All right, everyone. This is JD Sloane with my co-host here, Johnny Bandana, on the very first episode of the Tape Trader's Guide to 90s Pro Wrestling. So, Johnny, my whole idea behind doing this was I grew up becoming a wrestling fan in the 90s. Honestly, tape trading is what made me a wrestling fan. I wasn't a fan of Hogan and Warrior and, you know, the 80s type of stuff, WWF, and I didn't really watch a lot of NWA or anything like that when I was a kid. I always knew about pro wrestling, but I wasn't what I'd call a fan. And then, lo and behold, the 90s come along, and the internet came along. And by just random chance, I typed in some kind of wrestling terminology. And up came a tape trader's tape list of all the different things that he had to offer. And so I clicked on it and I was checking it out, and I saw some just wild things, just stuff that people's names that I knew, wrestling people who I didn't know for companies I'd never heard of, and it just intrigued me. It just caught my eye. And I'll never forget, I saved up $40 and I bought 4 recorded VHS tapes from a guy in, I think it was in Philly, 4 random things, and that was the beginning of my journey. I got some, I believe it was, at the time it was Memphis. I got some, but I don't believe it was USWA. I may have gotten something out of either, CWA. I don't know what the promotion was. I don't really remember the tapes. They weren't necessarily great tapes, and they weren't real memorable. But it just sparked such a giant interest to learn about all these different places and different people that kind of started my journey. And the reason why I wanted you to come and do this with me today, Johnny, is because you're younger than me. So your journey started completely different. I would suspect, and I don't know this for sure, but I would expect that you probably became a wrestling fan during the Attitude Era.
Yeah, Attitude Era, but mine was more like, WCW, more or less like the Sting was my guy.
Uh-huh.
So, I would always watch TNT and TBS, watch all the, WCW I could. Got into WWE, I guess, a little later on. It was in the Attitude Era, but I mean, a little later on, Attitude Era,
So did you watch like when they first started bringing in the cruiserweights and like Conan, or was it before that? Was it kind of like when Hogan first came over and Savage?
At the end of '95, early '96, I guess, right when they were doing that. I guess I don't know if it was New Japan or who it was, but guys like Malenko and Eddie Guerrero.
Yeah, there was a big rush of talent in the mid '90s. Late '94, '95. It seemed like, both WWF and WCW were just real heavy with talent. There was a lot of talent out there. A lot like it is right now. The independents have a lot of talent. And in my opinion, the early 90s, because you kind of saw that as the 80s went on, as the late 80s kind of started to happen, 87, 88, business was at an all-time high. But by 89, 90, 91, everything from a national level really started to deteriorate, and it started to go down. And then you had the scandals with the steroid scandal, which, Vince put a lot of money into the trials and everything like that. And so wrestling itself, I mean, it was still popular. People were still watching it, but it had changed. It wasn't quite so rabid. And I think that the independent scene really helped professional wrestling in ways that nobody really understands. The 90s, the Attitude Era was great, and I love the Attitude Era. I don't think it ages particularly great, but I was always a big fan of WWF and WCW during that period, obviously because that's when I was watching wrestling the most. But it was because of the indies. And I believe that all that talent like Jericho, Lance Storm, Dean Malenko, Chris Benoit, Conan, Val Venus, all these people that were passing through ECW before they were going to WWF or WCW, they were all started out in promotions like Smoky Mountain and USWA. And, Val Venus was popular and really gained traction for Burt Prentice. I just uploaded on my YouTube page the other day a promo from Val Venus for Burt Prentice and his Ozark Mountain Wrestling in '95. But he was popular in Mexico, and that's under a mask, and that's where he really gained the eye of the WWE in the first place. So I think the indies were just pushing out so many talented people and doing such crazy different types of wrestling. That's what created the Attitude Era in reality. That's what caused the boom. It was from the talent. So I think the 90s are really interesting because they started out really cold. They ended, the highest that they could possibly be. And we, as fans, as in the age bracket that I am, I don't experience that at all anymore. I don't feel any kind of real passion, not even from the fans. It seems like pro wrestling fans nowadays, they watch wrestling because that's just what they do. They just watch it. Comes on Monday, so they watch it on Monday. Comes on Tuesday, so they watch it on Tuesday. If you know, if they know about TNA, then they watch TNA when it comes on.
Right.
But there's nothing. No one wakes up on Monday morning thinking, "Oh my God, I've got to watch Monday Night Raw," because I have no idea what's going to happen. For the most part, we know what's going to happen, and it's going to be a rehash of what's been happening, and it's not going to be that interesting, you know. And we know that. Even with the best talent in the world, which they have right now, they've got just, you know, incredible talent. The storytelling and the complexity of the storylines is just boring. It's just not there.
It's that PG, you know, it's killing. It's not. It's you know, we're not going to see glass break. Mm-hmm. You know,
yeah,
not going to be a lot of, you know, cement getting poured in somebody's fancy car. And
it's
chaos going on.
We're not going to see, but you know, it's just I don't believe. For instance, I don't believe Kevin Owens really dislikes Daniel Bryan, or I don't think, you know, it's just not believable anymore. Even when during a time when we already knew it wasn't real, we still believed, and I think that people want to believe. I think they want to, you know, for that short period of time, just forget that they know that it's a work, and then when it's over, they can go back to talking about it like it's a work. But while they're watching it, they want to be sucked in to whatever's happening. And so we're going to talk everything 90s wrestling. We're going to reminisce stuff. I want to be really interactive with the people that are following us on Facebook. You know, you can search WrestleTopia for all your social media needs. But the Tape Trader's Guide to 90s Pro Wrestling, we have a Facebook page. Make sure you go there and hit the like button. And we want to interact. And you know, one of the things I want to do, which is an idea that I got from the Booking the Territories podcast, is every time we have an episode, let's watch a classic 90s event. You know, beforehand. Yeah. Let's watch the Royal Rumble. Let's watch Smoky Mountain Wrestling Night of Legends. Let's watch something from USWA or Global Wrestling Federation or, you know, WCW. Let's watch just every single time, watch something new, something that kind of embodies the 90s, you know, whether it's 1990, 1995, or 1999, something that really embodies that time period. And let's watch it and see how well it holds up to today, you know, like, How great was Arn Anderson's Spinebuster really? You know, if we 30 years ago, is it really that great today as it was then?
Absolutely.
And then, like, how great was Sid Justice in the WWE? How great was he? You know, what about the Snowman in USWA? Or, you know, I'd like to find some really off the wall stuff. Like there's a guy in California named Dr. Mike Lano, who used to have this cable access show, and he was a dentist in his shoot life. He was a dentist, and the show is called Lano's Canvas Cavities. Yes, and he would narrate, you know, different matches from different promotions. There was another thing out of California called Incredibly Strange Wrestling. Have you ever heard of this, Johnny?
I've never known.
Okay, they also went under the name California Creative Wrestling, and there was a guy named J.R. Benson, and I always see him with things with Jim Cornette, like they're tight, they're people or something, but they would put on the craziest of crazy shit you've ever seen. Absolutely insane. So they would have matches like HIV on a pole match. Ooh. Where HIV infected needles on a. So they'd have this board, right? It was a hardcore promotion. They'd have a board full of needles, and supposedly one of the needles in this board had the HIV virus. You know, and so
this is a great match already.
They would have a character called the Abortionist. I shit you not. And he'd come out. Listen to this. He'd come out with a with a clothes hanger. This is disgusting, by the way. FYI, he'd come out with a clothes hanger that would, at the end of it, it would look like it was bloody, and he would move it around and would look at the camera and say his tagline was grind the hanger, grind the hanger. And he'd be in like, you know, in clothes like hospital clothes and stuff, and he'd wear a mask. Disgusting stuff. There's things that I didn't even say that just so if on YouTube you can look up Incredibly Strange Wrestling and you're going to see some things that you can never unsee. Trust me, because I've never unseen it, you know. But when I was a kid, the very first time I ever got an ISW tape, right? At the end of this tape, after I watched all this craziness and stuff, at the end of this tape was the video that Chris Jericho shot of Jim Cornette when he freaked out at the Wendy's.
Yeah.
When he got all pissed off and he got out of the car and he's banging on the Wendy's door and calling the chick a fat cunt, and like that was at the end of one of these tapes, you know. And that's what was so awesome about being a tape trader, dude. Is, you know, for me, like I started tape trading in 1992. And so it was very few people. When I did it, you know, I was one of a few, you know.
Me too.
And yeah, and I would get tapes of just some of the most, things I'd never, just great promotions. Things that I remember today, great wrestling, great characters, different people that never went on to be anyone, you know. Yeah. It's kind of like, you know, in our life, Johnny, you know, here in Nashville, being in the wrestling business, we know a lot of people. And we know a lot of people that are incredibly talented. And people who are, in my opinion, someone that I look up to, and I think, you know, these are true journeymen, and they're people that really understand and know this craft. But maybe they aren't known to a wider audience, right? You know, maybe Derek King's not known to millions of people. Yeah. But I think Derek, for the last, 15, 20 years, Derek King is one of the best performers.
Absolutely. Hands down.
Hands down. From his entrance to what he does in the ring, he's someone who understands how to work a crowd. And he's not doing a lot of work.
No,
he's not doing a lot of stuff, you know, but he knows how to, he's a true professional wrestler. But maybe people don't know who he is the way they should. And when you were a tape trader, you knew all those people.
Yeah.
From everywhere. And so you felt kind of like an elitist, you know, a pro wrestling elitist. You knew more about pro wrestling than anyone else because you went out and found it, you know, and you uncovered it and you dug for it. And today it's different with YouTube, and you know, everything's kind of at the touch of a fingertip, where before you had to create relationships with other traders and you had to get to know different people, and there was always those traders that were like well known and like had a trader name, and you know, and they were assholes, and they all their shit was perfect video quality, and you know, everything was first generation, and you know, they only sold because you couldn't trade with them because they already had everything, you know. And so there was always those people, and but you were part of this community where it's like everybody that was in the community were all the same, you know. We were all out there searching to have everything. The goal was to have absolutely everything, from Japanese wrestling to, you know, Mexican wrestling to Korean wrestling.
World
just
dominance of wrestling footage.
You know, you just wanted all the footage, you know, and you had great pride in like counting your tapes, you know, stacking your tapes on the wall.
Something to you. You worked your ass off to get that.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't have it.
So it was. And some of my favorite people, I think, in wrestling have not been the Hulk Hogans or the Ultimate Warriors. Not necessarily just the workhorse, but just people who I identified with more, you know. And I think I found that on indies more so than the mainstream, which made being a tape trader pretty damn cool, you know.
Yeah.
Let's go over. Let's talk about you a little bit. Let's talk about let's talk about how you first kind of started, because when I met you, you were already training at TNA when you came to train with us, but you were already training at TNA at that time. I was
so lost, man. I had gone. I was real mixed up in school. You know, wasn't doing good in school at all. So I was like, well, not doing any good here, and here's a wrestling show down at the fairgrounds on Wednesday night. I'm just going to go down there on Wednesdays, and so I did. Ended up meeting Ron or Don Harris. I think it was Ron. I believe
Don't
it
know
was
which
Ron. And somehow I had got my way in the building. There's no security. Just walk right in the building, and everybody's kind of mingling amongst each other, and going over here and talking about this and talking about that, and I'm just trying to blend in with the referees and see if I can't just see what's going on. And next thing you know, Ron throws me a shirt and puts me to work. I'm sweeping the stage. Kind of started working with the production end of things until I met Chase Stevens, and then I'm pretty sure, man, the rest of my life was fucked. Can I say that? That's fucked, man. I mean, I met Chase, and I wanted to get trained, and I wanted to be a wrestler. I'd always, when I grew up, since I was 95, 96, watching it, getting real, wanting to just be like Sting, wanting to fucking get in the ring. I believe it was Burt Prentice. I think I lied to you, man. I believe it was Burt Prentice, first person I met, and he grabbed me by my collar and he jerked me across the sports arena. And I was just wanting to get in the ring and train. He's like, $35, you little fuck, and I'll let you get in the ring. Took all my money for like 3 or 4 weeks. It was Chris Vaughn.
Oh, wow.
Chris Vaughn was the guy, Livewire.
Yeah.
And, worked with me right before Chase. But then Chase got a hold of me, and, I started training with him twice a week. And we used pretty much whatever ring we could find. I mean, we would go to Indiana, and I think we trained in somebody's backyard, for a couple of days. We didn't have a ring. We were just out taking bumps out in the yard. Shoot clotheslines from Chase out in the yard, things like that. Learn how to tuck my chin real well there. But yeah, man. I mean, been out of a ring now for 5 years. Almost 6 years, and
that we'll get that to change. But I mean, you were in a hardcore battle royal last year.
Hardcore battle royal. It was very interesting. our stay, to say the least.
It was in let's if you want, go to my YouTube page. Just check out WrestleTopia TV, and you can check out and watch the hardcore battle royal from Memphis, Mid-South. What is it? Mid-South Elite Pro Wrestling. It's Tattoos Promotion, MEW. It's MEW in Memphis. And we had it in this...
it's a bar.
This nightclub.
Nightclub. Yeah, nightclub.
It was a nightclub. It was a pretty legit nightclub.
Nice.
I will say that.
There's some good lighting there.
But it was an experience.
Yeah, Memphis.
In Memphis. And the whole trip was an experience, one that we can never get back. but so when you were, how old were you when you first started watching wrestling?
When I first started watching wrestling, I guess I was probably 8 or 9.
8 or 9. So you're watching wrestling since the 90s, and you start really getting into it as WCW starts getting hot. They have Nitro, and
they had just got Hogan. I guess they didn't know Hogan, and Savage was over there, and I always like Savage was real colorful, but I didn't get to see him, and when he was in WWE before. Until later on.
Oh, so he was almost new. He was.
Yeah.
Like when you're seeing these guys come from WWE, they're new to you.
They're new to me. I don't know them from... Absolutely. Yeah.
So as WCW started to grow, I mean, I know Sting is your guy, right? Sting is the guy. What did you think during that time period when he started growing his hair out? He wasn't doing the crow thing.
No.
He was just, his hair was, he had stopped dyeing it, and so it was starting to turn brown. Mm-hmm. You remember he had brown hair, and Nitro had just kind of first started, and his hair's growing out, and I really don't know what the direction they're going with him, because they've got Hogan in there, and Hogan's obviously the number one babyface. But you see this change in him. Did you think that he was, did it feel like he was going to turn bad, like he was going to be a bad guy and change from being the ultra baby face that he had been for so long?
Yeah, I guess I seemed like I got that feeling in a way.
It was a weird time period.
But you didn't know which way they were going, like you were talking about. I mean, he went into the way with that, and then he took like an absence, I believe, how long it was, a year or two.
Yeah,
I remember my memory was gone, but he took some time off, and then he come back. I guess he'd done the Crow character. What was this? Was it the arena downtown Nashville? Was it? The old one.
Municipal.
Municipal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you like the Crow thing? I mean,
I
being
did,
a Sting
man.
fan.
I think it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely it was. I mean, when they actually had the Crow train, you know,
Uh-huh.
go down there, it was like, man, like, it was so something mystic about him, you know, something that you just you want to understand, you know.
No, it was different because he wouldn't talk.
He wouldn't talk.
You know,
He
there
wouldn't
was
say a
no
word.
promo.
And then when he did finally say a word, man, it meant so much.
Right.
It was like you were waiting for like what I can't remember what he said, but my God, when he finally spoke, after that time,
It was an angle
2 or
that
3
took
years.
so long.
Yeah.
You know, it took so long.
built it right.
And he didn't talk, and you're so used to watching wrestling where everyone's talking.
Everybody's
Everyone,
good talking
for the most
about
part,
things.
everyone's shouting or screaming or,
Yeah.
brother this, brother that,
Of
and
course.
for him to be intertwined in this story where he was, a major focus and not talking at all, it was so intriguing.
He just point that bat, and
Yeah.
that's all he needed to do, and it was like, man.
What
Had
did you
everybody.
What did you think
risk.
of Fake Sting? Do you remember seeing the episode where Sting supposedly turned heel and it wasn't actually Sting, but he got out of the limo and I think he kicked Luger because Luger came out to ask him what he was doing,
Yeah.
and it was already Jeff Farmer. It was Jeff, the fake Sting, who was in the makeup and everything.
Right.
But did you think that he sided with the NWO? Did you think he turned heel that night? I mean, what did you think of that? And have you ever, even to today, have you ever seen the Halloween Havoc 1989 where they had a fake Sting? It was Barry Windham, and it was Sting versus Psycho Sid. And at one point, Barry Windham comes running out. This is while Sid was still in the Four Horsemen. Looked like Sting, took a pinfall, then ran out, and at one point they crossed each other and looked at each other. So that it was like both Stings looking at each other, but it was actually Barry Windham, who's taller than Sting and has a completely different body.
Yeah. No, I know that.
Have you ever seen that
I've seen
match?
it, but I can't, my mind's not
Right.
near like yours. So. You don't want to wrap it around right now.
Right. I wonder if I can bring it up right now and see if you can see it.
Sure.
But so what let's talk about, just in your opinion, what were some of the highlights of 90s wrestling for you? Your memory, not even 90s, because
I mean, it was
the
pretty
90s
90s was my era. I mean, obviously, I did get into WWF, and the Attitude Era started kicking off for me, and I liked Owen Hart.
Did you stop watching WCW?
No, I'd get 2 TVs, and I was hooking up with my buddy, and we'd watch Nitro, and we'd watch Raw, and then watch Monday Night Football as well. We were doing all kinds of things.
Oh wow, really multitasking.
But we know you had Nitro going. I think I remember it was Nitro started an hour before at one time. I remember, I guess they got a 3-hour slot. I think maybe Raw was doing 1 hour, and finally got 2 hours, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So we
because they all started
one TV recording.
1 hour. Yeah, wrestling used to be a 1 hour show.
Or WCW at one point in time. I don't know if it was Nitro or it was Thunder, but they would run the encore.
Yeah.
So you'd be able to watch
it come right on right afterwards.
Yeah,
Which I loved. Yes, I do remember that because that's how I'd watch WCW. I would watch Raw. And then I watched the encore of WCW, and I would always tape everything. When I was a kid, because I was a tape trader, but I wouldn't tape whole episodes of Raw and Nitro. And I don't know if I didn't do that because, I don't know why I didn't do it, but I just didn't do it. But I would take the best matches, and so I'd have these completions of, the best matches of Raw and Nitro, and so just be match after match after match after match. But yeah, I used to do the same thing, or my mom and my brothers would want to watch, TV. I'm like, no, you can't watch TV.
that was a
because
problem.
I've got to, but they'd be like, well, you have a TV in your room. Like, no, I got to use both TVs.
I'm working at TV too.
I got to use both things. Okay, you guys just got to chill out.
Yeah, it did get tough at times.
So what were some of the highlights? Who were some of the people that really influenced you, to where you're at now, where you're within the wrestling business itself?
Kurt Hennig.
Mm-hmm.
I liked a lot of work from Kurt Hennig, which I seen in WCW before I seen in Mr. Perfect, right? Didn't know Mr. Perfect, knew Kurt Hennig,
Yeah.
So then go back and seeing all the stuff he did as Mr. Perfect was just made even better. Guys like that, Bret Hart. I was love watching Bret Hart. Why not? I guess I have to say Benoit, man. I kind of been holding that one. I know it's most popular name.
Yeah.
I guess it's probably my favorite wrestler. I mean, Sting growing up because he was just so technically sound. And I wanted to be like that. I wanted to be, crisp and just hard hitting. And
Right.
It looked like
Crisp.
when you watched his match, you knew that, man, this was like a real fight right here.
Yeah.
Like, this is really happening.
Yeah. I think crisp is the
another
best
guy,
way.
William Regal and Fit Finley, both of them guys. A lot, watch a lot of their stuff. WCW.
All right, let's see if I can find it here.
Oh man,
we're looking for the fake stings from Havoc '89. If I can find it. Except I think this is the wrong.
That's not Colonel Parker, isn't it? Colonel Parker.
I think that's the wrong Havoc right there. But yeah, don't hate us because we don't know what the hell we're doing right now. This is the first episode. Hopefully, every episode we do, I will make it my mission every episode we do to get better at what we're doing. So it's not quite so.
All the heat goes on Johnny Bandana as well. I'm on this first installment of the program.
Well, I don't know where that is. That is not. Let's see if I just type in. But what about ECW? So what was your introduction into ECW? Did you ever get to see it? Did it ever come on TV here in Nashville?
Honestly, it was when it came in on TNN when it first started airing on that, which was late. Was it 99 or something like that?
Yeah.
2000, like the millennium.
What was it that, how did you hear about it?
I knew about it. I mean, I knew about it years before. I just didn't, I wasn't really like you. I didn't have, I didn't seek access.
Right,
to
sure. I mean, not everyone was like me.
But I knew about it, right? Absolutely not. Right. But being a tape trader was a thing that it was kind of like the underground music scene. Mm-hmm.
That's a good way to describe it. I was underground wrestling scene. I knew about all the different things that were going on in the underground of wrestling. And it might have been because of my age because. I had that internet access so early that I kind of understood how to use it. As I kind of grew up with it, if that makes sense. I was very young and kind of grew with it. I remember when it was you would get a disc for a free, I believe it was 20 hours. You were allowed 20 hours of free internet access from AOL. And, it was dial-up and everything like that. You couldn't use the phone. There was no, call waiting or anything. You weren't able to use the phone at all. Yeah. And when someone would call you, it would knock you off.
It'd knock you off, right?
Oh, and that would piss you off. Oh, you'd be so pissed. What the fuck's going on here? And then it went from the free 20 hours to, I believe it was a free, it went up 10 hours, to 30 hours, right?
Oh, man.
And then competition got tough, though, right? Because then CompuServe and Prodigy came out. And they all came out with free 1 month discs. So what you do is you get all 3 discs. Each of them got you a month. And you do one. Then when that month would run out, you do the next one. Then when that month would run out, you do the next one. Then you start back at the beginning. Because that's the only way you can get free internet back then. Because internet cost by the minute. They charged you by the minute for internet.
Yeah, of course you're going to find a way around it. So.
Oh, yeah. You got to do what you got to do. We're all out here to... we're not trying to pay for internet. But, actually, the way that I first got newsletters. You remember newsletters?
I remember newsletters vaguely.
They used to have, email newsletters back in the day.
Computer.
And... So the way that I'd never heard of a newsletter or anything, and we had gotten rid of the internet. We couldn't afford it. It was something that had to go, There's no way around it. And so in 1995, 1996, this happens, and they come out with this thing called Juno Mail. And Juno, Juno.
Yeah.
It was free email. It wasn't internet. It was just email. You could send and receive email and free. That's it. Yeah.
Good to go.
And so I would get you get on mailing lists for these newsletters that would be emailed to you. And so they'd send you emails, and you'd read them, and they'd be, all the dirt sheets, all the kayfabe news that you weren't supposed to know about, and you're 14, 15 years old, and you think I'm the shit, I know everything that's going on. So here's a funny story. The very first time that I met Steve Dahl, and this was long before he ever trained me, ever knew me like that. Okay. The very first time I ever met Steve Dahl was in 1997 at the Nashville Fairgrounds for, I think it might have been the Tojo Yamamoto Memorial. I can't remember the name of the card. It was a Burt Prentice show, Music City Wrestling. And Steve's the babyface. And so, Burt, the way he would do it is he'd have on two separate areas of the fairgrounds would be babies and then heels. Well, the heels dressing room was just shut off. It was just shut off. There's a curtain over there, but that's it. The babies dressing room would have a gate around it. So all the baby faces could come walk out in that gate right there before the show and shake hands and, kiss babies and smile and everything. And so here I am. I'm like 15 years old, 16 years old. And I just watched the very first New Jack Shoot interview. Okay? Oh, yeah. So I thought I was the shit. I knew all about wrestling. I knew all about wrestling terminology. I knew about shoots. I knew all this stuff, right? And so here I want to be, I want to be I want to be a guy like RF Video. I'm thinking this guy's fucking so lucky. He gets to travel all over the world with ECW and film all their shit and do all this stuff and make money and, that's what I want to be. Little do I know how much of a piece of shit Rob Feinstein is. He's a piece of shit. Little did I know how much of a piece of shit he was at the time, but I wanted to be like that. I wanted to do those things, So here I am with big giant nuts, and I walk up to Steve, and he's standing out there. He's baby facing everywhere, and big smile, and talking to everyone. I walk up to him and I shake his hand, and he's totally nice to me, And I knew who he was from WWF. I remember him as Well Done. And so I knew who he was. And I thought, he's a big star and everything. And so I'm like, hey, Steve, hey, what could I do to get you to do a shoot interview with me? And he was not. This was not a time when Stevie was comfortable with breaking kayfabe. And, dude, he looked at me. Looked me down. He looks through my soul with his eyes. And scared the living shit out of me. I'll never forget him looking at me and me just slowly backing away. Just walking away from that situation. So years later, when, I meet him and he's training me, I tell him that story. And he just laughs, and slaps me as hard as he possibly could on the back of my head. And told me that, he just, at that time, he just, the boys still weren't ready to let go of, or not all of them. Even though kayfabe had been broken, the boys, they still weren't really ready or used to doing that, especially with some teenager kid who's just walking up to him, thinking he's the shit, and so I'll never forget that, though. That scared the living shit out of me. It just did. And later on, while Steve is training me, we would talk about that. And we would talk about what it meant to be a heel. And it's not about flipping people off and telling them to fuck off or talking shit about their wife. Or he said, sometimes if you're really good, if you're really hated, if people really, really fucking hate you, all you got to do is look at them. That's it. You just look at them. You stand on that apron. You used to tell me that sometimes Reno would be in the ring working, and Stevie would be on the apron, and he would just turn around and just look at someone. He'd pick someone out of the crowd and just stare at them and stare at them until they got so fucking mad they'd get up with their chair and try to hit him.
Never say a word.
Never say a
Never
word.
said a word.
Never said a word about it. Just by his look.
Awesome,
just by his look, and it's true because I felt it. Yeah. I knew what that look was. Right. I felt that look, and so. That was one of my favorite stories of the late great wonderful human Steve Dahl. Yeah, a wonderful wonderful man.
Remember the first time I met him.
Yeah.
I was like I say, back to where I was talking about where I was doing production, with TNA. I thought I was top shit. Like Johnny Bandana wasn't even born yet. He was fucking Johnny Badass, and been in it was the old WCW ring, so it had double cross cables underneath. Well, it made those ropes so tight, made them very, very tight. And remember, AJ liked them tight. Hey, gotta use ropes tight, And so when them tights, we get them all tight. And I was used to hitting those ropes, with training and stuff on the Wednesdays. And so then when I met you, you and Steve,
it was me
Steve Hall,
and Steve Hall and Steve Dahl. Yeah. It was their school, and then me and my buddy Jeff. We'd come and pick you up.
That's what it was. Yeah,
we'd come and pick you up from your house in Mount Juliet. your parents' house. We
Hermitage.
Hermitage, yeah.
Backyard might have
Yeah.
It was close. It was
Yeah,
close.
we'd come and pick you up, and I'll never forget because I was thinking like, wow, this dude's skinny as shit. You know?
man.
What is this guy? What is he thinking? You
Oh,
know?
baggy clothes.
Well, I'll never forget when I started at the school. You know, Stevie, both Steves, you know, wonderful men. You know, Steve Hall, Steve Dahl, two wonderful people who took care of me when I was homeless and had no food, had no money. You know, great, wonderful people. But when I first started with them, you know, Steve's when we first met, me and Steve, we met at an Applebee's and he bought me a beer and he gave me an autograph WWF magazine that he was in. And he told me, he said, you know, a long time ago, the whole idea about training wrestlers was to beat the shit out of them so bad they want to leave. Yeah. And if they didn't leave, then we let them in. He said, well, I'm not trying to do that. Because I don't want to, his exact words were, I don't want to break you, I want to make you. I want to make you successful. I want to make you sure that you understand the business and, you know, I want to do right by you. And I'm not a Buzz Sawyer. I'm not gonna, you know, take a couple $100 from you and then skip town or anything. And so I'm like, great. So I'm thinking, oh, well, this isn't gonna be quite so bad, you know. Right. And so the very first day at school, Reno shows up to help out a little bit, and Reno goes, hey, let me show you a move. And I said, what move? And he goes, well, it's called the sugar. And he popped it on me, dude, and you know, he busted both of my the blood vessels in both of my eyes.
Reno did this?
Yes, I passed out.
Brown eye, hazel eye? Yeah. Blue eye, hazel eye?
Yeah, good old Reno Riggins, yeah. I passed out right there on the mat, you know, and I may have peed myself a little bit, I'm not sure, you know.
I never knew this.
He just,
told me this.
Yeah, and we laughed about it. You know, to this day, we still laugh about it. Every time I see him, we laugh about it. But the reason why was, you know, he wanted to make sure I knew how to do it. Yeah, he wanted to make sure that it's that easy to do, you know, and then he taught me how to do it, you know,
just like that.
Yeah, and you know, if you get in some shit, you know, you got to know how to protect yourself.
Absolutely.
You don't know if someone's going to be an asshole or you know what they're out to do, or you know some piece of shit indie, you know, that's got a bunch of people that know what the fuck they're doing. Yeah, so but yeah, so you come in and your first night in class. Go ahead and tell us. Tell everyone.
I'm so ashamed by it, you know. I mean, I really am. Like, I think about things a lot, you know, that I've done in my life. It's like really, it's a shame. But you know, I was young, and I believe I was like 17 then, and I get in there, and first thing I noticed was the ring. And I was like, you know, this ring. Like, I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm going around, I'm running, I'm hitting the ropes a little bit. I'm like, this ring is shit. This ring is nothing. I mean, I'm used to this. You know, the only ring I've ever been in my entire life is this old WCW ring that their TNA's now using, the NWA TNA's now using, right? And it's like a solid ring, and it's, you know, I'm like, well, I'm thinking this is how all rings are supposed to be,
right? And
I'm getting in this ring, and I mean, now looking back, it was actually a very good ring,
a great ring compared to what's out there.
Very good ring. But I mean, at the time, so I think I had made I had, you know, my big mouth. I said, man, these ropes are nothing like TNA's. And I think like maybe that caught his attention. Right. I'm trying to, you know, like I said, my memory's not so good, but trying to think, like I'm pretty sure at that point in time. He had said something pretty stern in my direction, and I'm trying to remember exactly what it was that he said. I can't remember.
I'll never forget. You said, you know, these ropes, they're not tight enough.
I think I was talking shit about his ring.
And you're bouncing on the bottom rope, you know, like you're a fucking high spot monkey guy, you know, already, you know, like, well, yeah, you know, think about it. You weigh 120 pounds, you're 16 years old, you know, and you're talking about the ring ropes not being tight enough while you're bouncing on the bottom rope, thinking like you're fucking playing backyard wrestling on the Nintendo, you know, and which just made me sound really old when I said Nintendo. Hurts. So here you go, you say, you know, the ropes, and looking back at it, you know, you're just saying your observations out loud. You weren't talking shit about his ring. Smart, you were just saying what you were thinking, you know? Yeah. And so you're saying that, and he looks at you and he goes, he said, you can, oh man, what was it? These ropes aren't fucking tight enough for you. Can you take your ass back to TNA? I think that's what he said. You can take your ass back to TNA. I feel so
bad. Like, that's how he remembers me, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
no, he doesn't remember.
Jerk off. Like, where does this kid come from? You know? Like, the disrespect of these kids coming into the business nowadays.
That's why whenever Steve Hall announces you, he always makes sure to talk about you being from the state penitentiary. He's been ribbing you. The rib has been ever since then.
Well, I've always heard that. Smart me up on the rib, man.
That's the rib from the get go. Steve Hall remembers that, and so he's got to rib you every time that he announces you on your way out to the ring.
He does. Yeah. He always says in the state penitentiary, but I always thought that was because I would see him in court a lot. You know, because I would go to court a lot.
Well, maybe that's what it is. I don't know.
I just happened to see him in court. With his gun and stuff.
Well, shit, this was all over the place.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Like I said, first installment,
This
Johnny
was
Bandana
all
takes
over the place, but I didn't have a format or anything for this today, honestly, because I just wanted to get it done. I had actually planned on doing this maybe about 2 weeks ago with somebody else, and things just kind of fell through. So this is just a learning experience, a first-time experience. I wanted to get this done and put up there, and I wanted everyone who's actually listening to this, who knows, there might be one person, you might be the one guy, whoever is listening to it right now, you might be the one person, and I'm sorry. But if there's multiple people listening to it, hopefully you've gotten a feel for who we are, as people, what kind of people we are, how it's going to sound, what we're talking about. I wanted to make sure everyone knew what this podcast was going to kind of be about. And the format will change a little bit because, like I said, I want to review classic events. I want to review great times in wrestling, things that we remember. I want to do it in a way of the thought process of being, what were the popular tapes that were being traded back in the day? What were those tapes that everybody had in their list? When you ask somebody, hey, send me over a list so we can trade, what did they have that everyone else had all the time? Because those were those things that really defined that era, that time period in wrestling. So the next time that we talk, and I'm going to send you over this footage, Johnny. I'm going to hook you up with either a DVD of it or whatever. And for all the people that are listening, make sure you follow me on Facebook, Tape Trader's Guide to 90 Pro Wrestling. Hit the like button on there, and I'll be posting links of we're going to do FMW 1995, the Onita retirement match with Hayabusa, which I think, for that year, 1995, that tape was, everybody had to have that tape. That was just something that was needed. If you were a tape trader, you couldn't call yourself a tape trader without getting that tape. I really do think that tape was that important to the community of tape trading. And then maybe who knows, but maybe we'll do something WCW. We'll just talk WCW.
WCW.
Yeah, I'll get a bunch of bullet points ready for WCW, and we'll do FMW, the Onita retirement show, and then we'll just talk WCW 1990. We'll start in 1990. We'll just talk 1990 WCW. And talk about the ridiculousness, the awesomeness, and everything else in between. I want to do a couple plugs, Johnny. Let's plug James Carver, and you can on Podbeam, Podcast Beam. You can look up his podcast. It's Fired Up with James Carver. The Booking the Territories podcast. They actually are a great inspiration of what I want this podcast to be. Check them out. They do a Smoky Mountain Wrestling review show that is reviewing every episode of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, one episode at a time, and it's a fantastic listen. I think John Pollock and Wei Ting, their new venture is Post Wrestling. I want all the support in the world to them. Make sure you support your local independents out there. Make sure you support pro wrestling. Make sure you support your pro wrestlers. Buy their T-shirts. Buy the DVDs. Help this industry out. You as the fan is the biggest help in the world to professional wrestling. And Johnny, 2018 is here. Today is January 1st, 2018. This is the year of Johnny Bandana, right? This is the return of Johnny Bandana.
No more excuses.
No more excuses. That's right. You can catch us for sure in Knoxville for MSWA in March on March 2nd. March 3rd, and then I believe Alabama, we may be there for 2 nights, the 30th and 31st. So, and then we've got Jason James has the big Strawberry Fest coming up with Jerry Lawler taking on Doug Gilbert in 2018.
That's going to be
Josephus will be there.
Yes.
Chris Michaels, the very first guy to ever train me. Chris Michaels, the very first person to teach me how to lock up. Chris Michaels, when I was 16. Who else did they just announce? Teddy King.
Teddy King,
yeah, just announced to be at that show. So make sure you check out Pro Wrestling Entertainment on all your social media outlets. Don't forget WrestleTopia TV. Check out great, fantastic classic wrestling and current day handheld wrestling. Lots of stuff that I actually shoot from the commentary table while I'm sitting down doing commentary. I'll shoot some some fan cam footage for your enjoyment, all of your enjoyment. So if you bared with us all the way through now, thank you so incredibly. Thank you. And please check out episode 2. I promise it'll be better. I promise. Please come back and check it out one more time. If you like this idea of what we're doing, this idea of 90s pro wrestling from a tape trader standpoint, please interact. Please interact. Give me ideas. Give me ideas of events you'd like us to cover, things you'd like us to talk about. I'm going to have guys, special guests on the show. Hammerjack's going to be a special guest. Jerry Lynn will be a special guest. I'd like to get Tracy Smothers to give us some stories.
After he beats that guy's ass, maybe you can bring him in here and have him talk about
make sure you're following Tracy Smothers on Facebook. Make sure you follow him. But all of I like James Carver. I'd like him to come on the show, and Chase Stevens and Francisco and Kiatsu and all of our friends and family. I'd like everyone to have an opportunity and shoot as many of these as possible. So please come back for episode 2 and beyond. So Johnny, got anything else you want to say?
Man, I just like listening to you. Man. You sound great.
All right, so friends,
come back.
Yeah, come back.
Fireworks gonna start popping off on the next episode for sure. So.
Yeah, come back. Give us another try. To our friends, neighbors, and loved ones, thank you all so much, and support pro wrestling.
Alright, so that wraps us up for this week. Thank you again for listening to the Working Fans Podcast. So as always, you can find us on Twitter at FansWorking. Our Facebook page is Working Fans Wrestling Pod. We have email where you can reach out to us and let us know what you think also. That's workingfanswrestlingpod@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram, workingfanswrestling_pod. And then as always, please continue to listen to us on Anchor.fm, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, all your major platforms. If you're following us on Apple Podcasts, which we are also on now, and YouTube, please make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. It helps us bring you these podcasts where we get to talk to you and talk with you every week.